Some people leave without a word, but it's your silence that leaves the loudest echo. They'll pretend they're fine, my friends. They'll smile like they're thriving, laugh like nothing happened, post like the world is their runway. But beneath all that noise is a silence they can't shake. Yours. And that silence, it's not just quiet, it's power. It's a presence that lingers in the space they thought they cleared. So if you've ever walked away without slamming the door, if you've ever chosen peace over petty, you're not just healing, you're haunting. No, now, hey folks, imagine this for a second. You walk out of a room without saying a word. No grand exit, no angry speech, no dramatic stare. Just silence. But the air you leave behind, it shifts. People start looking around, checking their phones, listening for a sound that never comes. That's what your silence becomes when you stop chasing someone who expected you to break. It becomes the ghost in the room, the presence that doesn't have to scream because its absence is already too loud. And here's the thing, they'll act like you didn't matter, like it didn't touch them, like they're already over it. But what they show to the world? It's just a costume change, a performance. Because deep down, your silence messes with them more than any angry text or emotional plea ever could. They don't miss the noise. They miss the stability. They miss the attention, the validation. The version of you that gave without asking, cared without conditions, showed up without keeping score. But when that version goes quiet, not out of revenge, but out of realization, they feel it in their chest. And here's what nobody tells you. The person who can stay silent without bitterness is the one who's already won. You see, my friends, the world teaches us to react, to text back, to explain ourselves, to fight for clarity. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Because silence isn't weakness. It's a mirror. And when you stop feeding their ego, they're left staring into themselves. And that's the scariest thing for someone who runs from accountability. Let's break the lie right now. They were never as indifferent as they acted. No one performs that hard if they truly don't care. You don't post 3 selfies a day if you're at peace. You don't suddenly start acting unbothered unless you're secretly checking who's still watching. So don't get it twisted. Your silence didn't go unnoticed. It went under their skin. There's a quote I love. You never really see someone's true face until you stop reacting to their mask. And when you go no contact, not as a tactic, but as a transformation, that's when their real emotions crawl to the surface. That's when your absence becomes the confrontation they can't mute. So stay strong, stay silent, stay focused. This isn't about ego, it's about energy. You're not punishing them, you're protecting you. You're not hiding, you're healing. And while they're still out there trying to perform peace, you're actually living in it. Write this in the comments right now to lock it in. My silence is my strength. Let them pretend, let them post. But you, keep rising. And don't forget, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because we're just getting started. Number 1, the performance is for them, but the silence is for you. Just because they're clapping doesn't mean the performance is real. You'll see it soon enough, their curated smiles, their group photos under warm bar lights, their sudden obsession with posting like life's never been better. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The louder they get, the quieter it really is inside. Because when you go silent, not to provoke, not to manipulate, but to protect, you trigger something they can't filter, edit, or bury under distractions. Your silence isn't absence, it's presence in its most potent form. And while they're staging confidence for the world, you're staging a comeback no one sees coming. They pretend they're unbothered because that's easier than admitting your detachment cut deeper than your devotion ever did. You didn't explode, you didn't plead, you didn't write a long paragraph at 2 a.m. hoping they'd understand. You simply stopped texting, stopped chasing, stopped breaking yourself just to make sense of someone who vanished like you were disposable. And that silence, it didn't say, "I don't care." It said, "I care too much about myself to stay where I'm disrespected." But part of you still wonders, why are they acting like they're fine? Did I really mean that little? Was it all fake? Those questions eat at you like acid, corroding the stillness you've been trying to maintain. You want answers, you want proof that they're struggling too. But here's the thing, pain that's hidden doesn't mean pain that's healed. Some people grieve by pretending they never felt. That's not strength, that's emotional avoidance dressed as confidence. You ever see a house burning from the inside while the windows look clean and untouched? That's them right now. The exterior's polished, filtered, posted, shared. But inside, the smoke's getting thicker. Because while you may have gone quiet, your silence didn't disappear. It multiplied. It seeped into their subconscious, curled up in their lonely moments, whispered through the cracks they thought they'd sealed. Every time they post a picture and don't see you watching, something stings. Every time they talk about how good life is without ever mentioning your name, something aches. They didn't expect to miss the version of you who doesn't chase, the one who doesn't ask for closure, the one who just let go. And you, maybe you're not completely okay either. Maybe you check their profile sometimes. Maybe you still wake up hoping to see a message. Maybe silence feels like a punishment on some days. That's normal. That's human. But here's what separates you from the chaos. You're choosing to sit with the pain instead of performing through it. They're running, you're reflecting. They're staging strength, you're building it. And that makes all the difference, because growth doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows, in the quiet, in the parts of you no one else claps for. What you're doing takes more courage than any comeback post could fake. You're not flinching, you're not folding, you're not sending that "I miss you" text just to feel something. You're choosing dignity over desperation. And that kind of power, that's what they never saw coming. You became the one thing they didn't anticipate. The man who walks away without needing to explain why. And when you don't explain, they're left to fill in the blanks. Their mind becomes the courtroom, the mirror, the interrogation room. And that silence you thought might make you invisible, it's making you unforgettable. Let them pretend, let them post, let them wear the costume of "I've moved on." But understand this, when someone truly lets go, they don't need an audience. They don't need to perform. And they definitely don't need to broadcast their detachment. The fact that they are, loudly, repeatedly, obsessively, isn't evidence of strength. It's evidence of fear. Fear that you're really done. Fear that your silence isn't a phase. Fear that you won't come back even if they finally stop pretending. And that fear, that's the beginning of their unraveling, because your silence doesn't just speak, it echoes. In the places they can't show anyone, in the spaces between songs, in the time between texts, in the mirror when the lights go out and the followers don't matter. You're not haunting them with noise, you're haunting them with stillness, with the version of you they can't reach anymore. And it's not because you're playing hard to get, it's because you're not playing at all. So when you feel that urge to break the silence, to prove you still matter, to make them see what they lost, pause, breathe, and remember, you're not trying to win them back. You're winning yourself back. You're reclaiming the parts of you that were slowly being chipped away. You're choosing peace over panic, discipline over drama, evolution over ego. And if you've ever watched someone pretend they were fine while you sat in silence wondering if it mattered, this is your moment of truth. Comment below, "My silence isn't revenge, it's evolution." Say it out loud, write it down, let it be known. You're not shrinking to fit back into someone else's delusion. You're expanding, quietly, powerfully, completely. And what's coming next? Trust me, it's not about them anymore. This was never about breaking their mask. It's about building your throne. Stay tuned. Because the next part isn't about who left, it's about who you're becoming. Number 2, your stillness becomes their reflection. Still water reflects the clearest image. That's the irony of silence. It doesn't block the truth, it reveals it. And when you go still, really still, without explanation or retaliation, something unexpected begins to happen. Not in you, but in them. They start to see themselves, not the version they present to the world, not the polished, smiling avatar they post online, but the raw, unresolved version, the one who said goodbye like it meant nothing, the one who walked away while expecting you to crawl back. And when you don't, when you stay calm, composed, grounded, they start to notice something they didn't before, their reflection. That's the power of your stillness. It doesn't yell, it doesn't accuse, it doesn't try to prove a point. It just holds a mirror. And people who run from accountability hate mirrors. Your silence becomes the surface on which all their buried guilt, doubts, and contradictions start to take shape. They begin to wonder, why hasn't he said anything? Why hasn't he reacted? Did he really let go that easily? Did he ever care? And those questions don't just visit them, they haunt them, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, in the pauses, in the late nights when their distractions wear off, in the early mornings when the noise hasn't started yet. At first, they'll try to project strength. That's the default. Post something cryptic, laugh a little louder, let their friends gas them up. But it's hollow, because your stillness creates contrast, and contrast creates discomfort. See, people expect chaos when they leave. They expect tears, closure talks, long messages explaining your pain. But when you don't give them any of that, when you choose stillness instead of spectacle, they're left with something far more confronting than your words themselves. You ever notice how silence makes certain people uncomfortable, like they have to fill the space with noise? That's not because silence is empty. It's because silence makes them feel exposed. And when you stop responding, stop explaining, stop validating their choices, they're forced to confront the weight of their own behavior without you cushioning the impact. They can't shift the blame. They can't rewrite the story. They can't hide behind your reaction, because you didn't give one. And in that stillness, they meet the version of themselves they were avoiding. Stillness is not passive. It's not weakness. It's presence with intention. It's the decision to withhold your energy from places that once drained it. You didn't go quiet because you didn't care. You went quiet because you finally did, about yourself, about your peace, about your healing. And while they're still chasing validation, still creating stories to feel better, you've become the chapter they can't rewrite, because you're not playing your old role anymore. And that's what makes it so powerful. You stopped dancing to their rhythm. You stopped feeding the cycle. You didn't just go silent, you changed the dynamic. And change is uncomfortable for people who benefited from the old pattern. They don't miss the version of you who sent the long texts. They miss the version who made them feel important, who reacted, who responded, who validated their drama with your presence. But you stepped off the stage, and now they're acting alone. That's what stillness does. It doesn't argue, it just removes itself. And that removal isn't absence, it's reflection. It shows them what they are when no one is giving them attention, when no one is clapping for their act. Stillness isn't loud, but it leaves echoes, echoes that bounce off the inside of their mind when they least expect it. When a song reminds them, when they pass a place you went together, when someone else doesn't laugh like you did. It's not about being unforgettable in a romantic way. It's about becoming the benchmark of what emotional clarity actually looks like. You didn't stay to be understood. You left and became undeniable. And still, the old version of you, the one who would have cracked by now, is whispering inside. Maybe I should reach out. Maybe I should explain what they did hurt me. Maybe if I just sent one more message. But no, that's not stillness. That's ego trying to heal through control. Stillness doesn't seek validation. It stands. And that standing, that unwavering posture of calm, is what disturbs them the most. Because people are used to provoking a reaction. When they don't get one, they start to question themselves. Not because you attacked them, but because you refused to collapse. This is why your silence speaks more than any goodbye could. It's not closure you're giving them, it's exposure. You didn't block them out of bitterness. You allowed them to stay, just not with access. They can watch, they can wonder, but they can't reach. And in that boundary, they begin to feel the cost of their choices, not through your rage, not through your pain, but through your evolution. If you've ever held still while someone tried to shake you, if you've ever bitten your tongue instead of breaking your peace, comment below, "My stillness is my mirror." Let it be known. Let it be felt. You are not here to perform. You are here to transform. Because while they're still playing the part, you've already left the scene. And what's coming next will make your silence not just a boundary, but a beginning. Number 3, detachment is the language of power. You never lose power by walking away. You lose it by explaining why you stayed. That's the truth most people don't want to face, because we've been raised to believe that love is proven through struggle. That if you really care, you fight, you chase, you hold on even when it hurts. But here's what they never taught you. Sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. Sometimes silence is more powerful than any explanation. And detachment? Detachment is the final stage of self-respect. It's not about becoming cold, it's about becoming clear. Clear about who you are, what you deserve, and what you'll never tolerate again. At first, detachment feels unnatural. Like you're holding back, like you're doing something wrong by not responding, not reacting, not checking in just to see if they noticed your absence. But that's the programming, that's the conditioning whispering to you, say something, do something, show them you care. And when you don't, that's when the real shift begins. Because now you're not speaking their language anymore, the language of emotional chaos, of tension, of push and pull validation. You're speaking in silence, in stillness, in detachment. And that's a language most people were never taught to understand. Because detachment isn't just silence, it's certainty. It's knowing that your peace doesn't depend on their attention. It's knowing that your value isn't tied to whether they notice your growth. You don't need them to see it, you just need to be it. And when you detach, you strip away the illusions, the performance, the back and forth. You stop negotiating with confusion. You stop asking people to treat you like a priority while they treat you like a placeholder. You don't need to beg for closure anymore. You become it. And that detachment? That's where the power flips. Because when someone loses control over your emotions, they lose control over the game. They were playing chess with your heart, calculated, strategic, waiting to see how you'd move. But when you stop playing, the board collapses. And suddenly, it's not about what they're doing anymore. It's about what you're not doing. You're not texting. You're not watching their stories. You're not reacting to their indirect posts. You're not playing into their subtle invitations to reconnect. And that absence, that refusal to bite the bait, is what throws them off completely. Because they expected you to fold. They expected silence to break you. They expected detachment to be temporary, but it wasn't. You didn't disappear out of anger, you withdrew out of alignment. And now they're not dealing with the person they used to know, the one who'd over-explain, over-give, overstay. No, now they're dealing with someone who doesn't need to be heard to be understood. Someone whose power isn't in what they say, but in what they no longer say. That's the terrifying part for them. Your silence isn't just silence anymore, it's authority, it's conviction, it's a message written in bold letters. I no longer negotiate with chaos. And that message, that's louder than any argument, louder than any tearful goodbye, because it leaves nothing to fight, Nothing to fix, nothing to answer. It just is. And now they're left speaking to an empty room, performing for someone who's no longer watching. You see, most people don't fear loss. They fear irrelevance. They fear not having access, not being able to trigger the reaction they used to. When you detach, you take that away from them. You don't block them to make a statement. You keep the door open, but you lock the energy inside. They can knock, they can shout, they can try every old trick in the book, but nothing comes out. Nothing feeds them. That's when they start to panic. Because they realize they no longer have emotional leverage. You're not cold, you're just done giving away warmth to people who used it as a weapon. And maybe you're still struggling with that. Maybe part of you still feels guilty for pulling back. Like detachment is a betrayal of your heart. But let me remind you, detachment doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally did. It means you cared enough about yourself to walk away from what was draining you. It means you chose healing over habits. It means you stopped watering dead plants just because the roots once mattered. That's not heartless, that's evolution. So let them talk. Let them pretend they don't notice. Let them post. Let them act like your silence means you gave up. Because what they don't know, what they can't know, is that your silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. It's a conscious decision to no longer let someone else's inconsistency write your emotional weather report. It's not about punishing them. It's about prioritizing you. If you've ever held the line when everything in you wanted to break it, if you've ever stayed silent, not because you had nothing to say, but because they no longer deserved to hear it. If you've chosen detachment over destruction, comment below, "My silence is my power." Say it like a shield. Say it like a truth you've earned. Because you didn't walk away to hurt them. You walked away to heal you. And what comes next? That's the beauty of detachment. It doesn't just end something. It clears the path for everything better. Keep watching. Keep evolving. Because this chapter isn't about their story anymore. It's about yours. Number 4. They expected you to fall, but you flew. People don't notice the strength it takes to stay silent until they realize you're no longer in the room. That's what happens when you rise quietly, when you detach not in bitterness, but in clarity. When they expected a breakdown, but got a man becoming unrecognizable in the best possible way. See, they didn't just expect distance, they expected your unraveling. They thought you'd crumble in the silence, that the space they left would cave in on you, that your need for their presence would override your self-respect, that you'd chase, that you'd reach, that you'd bleed just to get a drop of their attention back. But instead, you grew wings. And that's what they never saw coming. You didn't beg. You didn't fight for a seat at a table you were no longer being served at. You simply stood up and walked away. And in that stillness, in that exit, you shifted the entire dynamic. Because they were ready for the chaos. They were prepared for the tears, the paragraphs, the phone calls. That's the role they rehearsed for. That's the script they've used to stay in control. But your silence, that was unscripted, unpredictable, unmanageable. And when they don't know how to manage your response, that's when the panic sets in. Because they weren't trying to end you. They were trying to provoke you. They wanted to feel important, even if it was through conflict, even if it was through heartbreak, even if it was through guilt, anything but indifference, anything but silence. But silence is exactly what you gave them, and not the kind of silence that's pretending not to care while secretly stalking their page. No, the real kind, the rare kind, the kind that says, "I'm not reacting because I've evolved beyond needing to." You broke their expectations without saying a word. You became untouchable not by being cold, but by being composed. And that composure, that's what makes you powerful now. They don't have access to your pain anymore. They can't push your buttons because you're not on the same emotional frequency you used to be. You didn't fall. You took flight. and now you're above the noise they're still trying to create. But let's be honest, it wasn't easy. You had to fight the urge to explain yourself, to defend your worth, to prove that you cared. You had to wrestle with the ghost of your old self, the one that thought being chosen was the prize, the one that thought love meant proving something. But you chose differently this time. You chose peace over panic, presence over performance. You chose you. And that choice, that's the one they never planned for. Because the truth is, most people don't know how to handle someone who doesn't break. They know how to comfort you when you cry. They know how to criticize you when you lash out. But they don't know how to interpret stillness. They don't know how to respond to a man who doesn't need validation to know his worth. And that silence, that graceful detachment, is what starts to eat away at the illusion they built around themselves. You were supposed to fall apart. You were supposed to fold. You were supposed to need them more than they needed you. But what they got instead was a version of you that stopped needing approval to stand tall. You stopped explaining your silence. You stopped apologizing for your distance. You stopped hoping they'd see your worth because you finally saw it for yourself. And that self-awareness, that's what makes you lethal now. Not to them, but to your old habits, the ones that kept you in cycles, the ones that made you feel small, the ones that made you think being emotionally available to someone who vanished without respect was noble. It wasn't noble. It was self-sacrifice. And now you're done dying on emotional hills for people who never deserved your loyalty in the first place. Your silence didn't destroy you. It refined you. It sharpened your focus. It gave you room to build, to rebuild, to evolve without asking permission. You didn't need to make noise to be heard. You let your absence say everything. And now they're sitting in the space where you used to pour your energy, wondering how you became so unreachable. They scroll, they pause, they replay moments. And every time you don't show up in their notifications, in their orbit, in their ego, that's when the realization sinks in. You're not coming back. Not because you're angry, but because you've outgrown the emotional environment they tried to keep you stuck in. If you've ever surprised someone not by shouting, but by leaving, if you've ever chosen to rise in silence instead of begging for a reaction, if you've flown when they were betting on your fall, comment below, they expected my collapse. I gave them elevation. This isn't just about getting even. This is about getting free. Keep building, keep rising, because the next version of you, that's the one no one can touch. And when they finally look up, they won't see a man they lost. They'll see a man they never really had. Bottom of form. Number 5. The mind fills in what silence doesn't say. The mind hates silence because it can't help but make noise inside it. That's what happens when you stop talking, when you withdraw, not in rage, but in restraint, when you say nothing, yet speak volumes with your absence. Most people expect closure to come with words, but the most powerful closure isn't verbal. It's psychological. It's what happens when you let someone's imagination do the work. When you stop explaining, stop clarifying, stop giving them anything to hold on to, and in that empty space, their mind begins to unravel. At first, it feels like a win to them. They think your silence means surrender, that you've tapped out, that they're in control. They read your quiet as confirmation that you're hurting too much to speak. Or worse, that you're simply not strong enough to. But time always reveals the truth. Because silence doesn't just sit there. It multiplies. It grows in the dark. And soon, the questions begin to rise. Not yours, theirs. Why hasn't he reached out? Was I that forgettable? Is he over me? Is he with someone else? Did I even matter at all? And those questions don't go away after one scroll through your profile. They linger. They echo in the places where they thought they had the upper hand. Because silence, real silence, doesn't fade. It builds pressure. It becomes the unanswered call inside their head, ringing louder the longer you stay quiet. They start to rewind old conversations, dissect old messages, reread your last words. Not because they miss you, but because they don't understand how they lost access to you so fast. And the human mind hates not knowing. It fills in the blanks with fear. You ever watch someone smile publicly and spiral privately? That's what silence does. It's not a punishment. It's a reflection chamber. They're no longer reacting to you. They're reacting to their own thoughts about you. And because you're not there to interrupt those thoughts, to soften them, to guide them, they spin out of control. That's how the mind works. It hates unanswered stories, so it invents its own endings. And in those endings, you're always stronger, more indifferent, more evolved than they ever imagined. See, when you spoke, they felt powerful. They had control over your reactions. They could measure their worth by how much they affected you. But when you go quiet, not temporarily, not to play games, but with intention, they start to lose grip. And now, they're no longer in a dialogue. They're in a monologue. And the silence is responding in ways their ego never prepared for. Every day you don't message, don't post, don't watch their stories, it plants another seed of doubt. And doubt, when it's watered by silence, turns into obsession. You didn't ghost them. You just stopped feeding a system that was built on your attention. And without your energy, that system starts to collapse. What once looked like control now looks like confusion. What once felt like confidence now feels like chaos. Because silence exposes the lie they were telling themselves, that they were the prize, that you needed them more, that your feelings gave them leverage. But now, those assumptions are under attack by one thing: your absence. Stillness is clarity. But to someone who depends on noise, stillness feels like abandonment. It makes them question everything: your intentions, your emotions, your depth. And the worst part, you're not doing anything. That's what kills them. You didn't retaliate. You didn't show up trying to fix things. You didn't create drama. You just stopped showing up at all. And when someone expects you to fall apart without them, watching you stay composed becomes unbearable. They wanted to control the narrative, but you walked out of the story, and now they're left reading the last chapter over and over again, hoping it'll change. But it won't. Because you're no longer a character in their emotional play. You're the silence that replaced the ending, and they can't rewrite a story you no longer co-author. They'll say you're being cold, that you're doing it to hurt them, that you're playing mind games, but the truth is, you're just not playing anymore. You're living quietly, fully, away from the noise that once drained you. You chose self-respect over resolution, and that decision, that's the plot twist they never expected. You ever walk into a room and feel the absence of someone more than their presence ever used to weigh? That's what you've become now. You're not haunting them. You're just not there. And your absence makes more noise than any argument ever could. Because it says the one thing they didn't want to believe. You've moved on without needing to make them understand why. So let the silence stretch. Let their mind do what it will. You owe them no explanation, no paragraph, no apology for choosing yourself. If they wanted clarity, they should have given you respect. But they didn't. And now, your silence has become their consequence. If you've ever let the silence speak for you, if you've watched someone unravel in the space where your energy used to live, comment below. My silence asks the questions their mind can't answer. You're not playing it safe, you're playing it wise. And the next part of your story, it's not written with noise, it's carved in peace. Number 6, no reaction is the reaction. Power isn't always what you do, sometimes it's what you don't. And that's the truth they never anticipated. They were ready for the storm, your anger, your sadness, your confusion. They were bracing themselves for the messages, the late-night paragraphs, the apology masked as closure. That's how it usually goes, right? Someone pulls away and the other person breaks. But this time, you didn't break. You didn't send the text. You didn't call. You didn't try to get clarity from someone who chose chaos. And in doing nothing, you did everything. Because no reaction is the reaction. And it's louder than any screaming match they ever expected. You see, most people don't thrive on peace. They thrive on control, on knowing they can trigger you. That they still matter, even if it's through pain, especially through pain. So when you don't flinch, when you don't give them the emotional feedback they were counting on, it shatters their framework. It's not about love anymore, it's about power. And when you don't respond, you take that power back in full, because silence isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of discipline. It's proof that you are no longer emotionally accessible to someone who treated your presence like a convenience. And yet that silence, that stillness, it's misunderstood. They'll call it cold, they'll call it distant, they'll even accuse you of playing games, but it's not a game, it's self-respect, it's emotional maturity. Because what they really wanted wasn't honesty. They wanted a reaction, a reason to feel like they still had a grip on your emotions. And when you didn't give them that, when you chose detachment over drama, they were forced to deal with something they never expected, their own emptiness. You didn't fall into the trap. You didn't ask why they changed, why they ghosted, why they pretended you didn't matter. You didn't sit there trying to decode mixed signals from someone who already made it clear with their silence what you meant to them. You took that silence and matched it. But yours didn't come from ego, it came from evolution. You didn't shut down, you shut off access. And that boundary, that invisible line they didn't think you had the strength to draw, that's what hit them hardest. Because when you react, they still feel like they matter. When you reach out, even in pain, it tells them they're still in control. But when you don't react, when you don't even acknowledge the shift, they're left with nothing but the consequences of their own actions. And people who never expected consequences will always mistake your silence for cruelty. But it's not cruel, it's clarity. It's a mirror, and the longer you stay still, the louder their own guilt gets. There's something devastating about indifference, not because it's aggressive, but because it's final. You didn't explode, you didn't curse them out, you didn't try to fix what wasn't yours to fix. You just disappeared from the role they assigned to you, the emotional backup, the one who cared more, the one who always showed up. But now you've stepped into a version of yourself they can't play with anymore, a version that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't explain. And deep down, that unshakable calm, that refusal to react, is shaking them more than any confrontation would have. Because when someone expects chaos and gets composure, they don't know what to do with it. They start searching for signs, testing waters, throwing bait. A post here, a song lyric there, an accidental like. But you don't bite, because you've seen the game, and now you've chosen peace over participation. You've become the question they didn't think they'd ever have to ask. Why didn't he respond? Why isn't he fighting for me? Why does it seem like he's actually okay? And the truth, it's because you stopped needing to be understood by someone who made no effort to understand you in the first place. You stopped bleeding in places that never offered you a bandage. You didn't become heartless. You became honest with yourself, with what you deserve, and that honesty made you unreachable. So let them scroll, let them wonder, let them perform their indifference while quietly hoping you'll slip. But you won't, because every day you choose silence over reaction, you're not avoiding the pain, you're transcending it. You're building something stronger, something real, and they can't reach it. Because what you're building now doesn't need their validation to stand. If you've ever chosen silence instead of screaming, stillness instead of spiraling, peace instead of panic. If you've ever walked away not to punish, but to protect yourself. Comment below, No reaction is my revolution. Because you didn't need to raise your voice. You just needed to lower your access. And when they finally realize what your silence meant, it'll be far too late to hear anything at all. Number 7. Absence doesn't just hurt, it haunts. There's a silence that settles after someone leaves. But when you leave differently, when you leave without the drama, without the desperate text, without the door half open, it doesn't just hurt, it haunts. Because absence, real absence, isn't just a void, it's a weight. And you become that weight the moment you choose to stop showing up for someone who thought your love was infinite. They thought your presence was permanent. They thought they could disappear and return on their terms, and you'd be right there, still available, still watching, still hoping. But you weren't. And now your absence echoes where your presence once lived. Not loudly, not violently, but in a way that sits heavy in the quiet parts of their life. At first, they feel relieved. That's the twisted part. They mistake your silence for surrender. They tell themselves you've moved on too quickly, or maybe you're sulking somewhere, waiting for the strength to reach out. But when days pass, then weeks, and still nothing, that's when your absence shifts from freedom to fear. That's when the silence starts to speak. Because you didn't just walk away, you vanished with grace. And it's grace that unsettles them most, not bitterness, not anger, but that terrifying calm that says, I'm not waiting anymore. The human mind can handle confrontation. It knows what to do with arguments, messages, closure talks, even tears. But it doesn't know what to do with emptiness. With someone who used to mean everything, meaning nothing now, at least in action. That kind of detachment. It breaks their understanding of the script. You were supposed to circle back. You were supposed to orbit. You were supposed to find a reason to reconnect. But you didn't. You stayed silent. You stayed gone. And the longer your absence stretches, the more it tightens around their chest like a belt they can't loosen. They check their phone, not for a message from you, but to confirm one still hasn't come. They scroll through their own posts, hoping maybe, just maybe, you've seen something, liked something, left a fingerprint. But there's nothing. You've become the ghost they can't summon, the energy they can't read anymore. And that unknown, that uncertainty, is what starts to hollow them out from the inside. Because your absence wasn't just physical, it was energetic, emotional, spiritual. And when someone loses access to your energy, they don't just miss you, they mourn you, but they'll never say it. Not out loud, not at first. They'll post like everything's fine. They'll laugh harder around their friends. They'll make sure their stories show movement, happiness, forward momentum. But all of that, it's noise trying to drown out the silence you left behind. And silence doesn't die easily. It lingers, it waits, it grows. You may be gone, but the questions you left behind are still there. Did I push him away? Was he really that done with me? Did I matter at all? And they ask those questions quietly when no one's around to perform for, when they're brushing their teeth, sitting in traffic, lying in bed at 2 a.m., staring at a ceiling that won't answer them. And you don't even have to do anything. That's the beautiful, brutal truth. You've moved on not with noise, but with stillness. You didn't replace them to prove a point. You just stopped giving energy to what drained you. That move, that's what shifted everything. Because they weren't scared of losing you. They were scared of losing access to the version of you that loved without limits. The version that forgave too quickly. That stayed too long. That always replied. And now that version is gone. And what replaced it? Stillness, purpose, silence, presence with boundaries. And that version of you, that's not just gone, it's untouchable. They'll try to act like it doesn't matter, that your absence didn't dent them, But the cracks are showing, the timing of their posts, the songs they choose, the way they bring you up in conversations they pretend are casual. It's all there. Because deep down, they don't want you back. They just want the reassurance that they could still have you if they tried. And when that reassurance is gone, when they realize the door isn't just closed, it's locked from the other side, that's when the haunting begins. That's when they finally feel the weight of what they lost, not through your presence, but through the way your absence transformed you. You're not the same, and they know it. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're just not there. And nothing scares someone more than realizing the one person they expected to need them doesn't anymore. That's the echo they can't escape. The echo of everything they thought they controlled slipping through their hands. That's the punishment. That's the price. And you didn't lift a single finger to give it. If you've ever gone silent, not to hurt them, but to heal you. If your absence has spoken louder than any goodbye ever could, comment below. My absence echoes louder than their noise. You didn't disappear, you rose. And now your silence lives in the only place that matters. The place they can't run from. Their own mind.